We have Yevheniia Kravchuk, a member of Ukraine's parliament, with us, and she's in Washington, D.C. today, and we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I'd like to ask you, what's the latest on the situation in Ukraine?
Well, right now we are having counterattack in the south of the region, in Kherson region. One of the key cities, well, small city, Snehirivka, is already recaptured by Ukrainian armed forces. So the next would be actually Kherson and Chornobaivka, which is close to Kherson. I cannot tell the dates, of the complete counterattack, but our armed forces are working on that right now. And of course, the rest of Ukraine, especially central parts, still have to suffer from these blackouts that we need to do ourselves to balance the energy system.
Speaking of the blackouts, and the cause for them have mostly been drones and other types of missile strikes from the Russian military. Are you still having those in Kyiv and other cities around, away from the south and the east? Are those strikes and those attacks still taking place?
They are taking place. We have been very successful in our air defense system, especially to protect central regions, because actually Russians are aiming to knock out, Kiev as the capital and to cause the humanitarian catastrophe. We have around 3 million people living in Kiev. Mostly they live in residential apartments, and when there is blackout, you don't have anything basically. So we have already deployed a new air defense system from Germany, IRIS-T, and also NASAMS. Finally, they arrived from the States. But still, the strategy of Russians are to have this massive attack and trying to at least one or two hitting the target. So they would send, 50 missiles. 46 of them would be taken down, but some of them would hit the energy infrastructure. And it looks like that Russians are running out of supplies. That's why they're trying to buy missiles, not just drones, but missiles from Iran. So basically, they have to save to bring missiles from different parts of the country to have this massive attack. That's why they happen like once a week or something, once per 10 days. They have to cope and then fight them. And of course, we're getting into colder season. It will get colder with every day, and I think that they will be trying to do it during the winter as well, to cause as many humanitarian catastrophes as they can.
MP Kravchuk, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot about in the last few days are reports that Russia's leaving Kherson. The Ministry of Defense from Russia went on television, I think it was yesterday, state-run TV, saying that they were going to pull out of Kherson. Do you believe that?
That looks like a trap. That's why we listen to our Minister of Defense, not Russian. And we are working on the counterattack in the south, but it will happen in the date when our military see that it's the fastest way. It will not cost as many lives of our soldiers as Russians would like it to do. And why we have been waiting until November so long? Because all these months we've been cutting off supply chains and also targeting the stocks. So the troops, Russian troops that are deployed in Kherson region, will not have enough of ammo to shot to our soldiers. So basically, thanks to HIMARS, this counterattack actually is taking place, because we've been able to target very precisely bridges through which they bring the supplies, their stocks, and also we know, because we have a lot of our people are there, and there are They send in us basically coordinates where the troops are located, or the officers are, in what hotel these officers live, or where they go to have dinner. So basically, Russian soldiers are living in this constant stress, waiting, not knowing from where the missile will come. So we're working on different directions to make that happen. And we hope that we will be able to free this region by the end of the year, as our head of intelligence service told. But it doesn't have to be, like, okay, we're out. The Russians say we're out. We don't believe that. We have the information on the ground that they are trying actually to lure us to have this combat in the city.
Yeah, I spoke with the Pentagon yesterday, the Secretary of Defense spokesman yesterday, and he said as well that they haven't seen any evidence that Russia is pulling out of this area. And I know that Mr. Podolyak said yesterday as well, Ukraine's plan, as you said, is to make intelligence-based decisions and not staged television events. So it does seem like a trap. Question, do you think Russia thinks that the Ukrainian government or military would fall for something like that? What's the purpose of even doing that?
Maybe, I don't know, it's some sort of wishful thinking. They have this simple strategy that looks like good for them, but we're not buying anything that they wanted to sell us. But anyway, our aim at the end of the day is, of course, to deoccupy this region, but it will go through our plan, not Russian plan.
Mm. So you're in Washington, and it's interesting that you're here, but we're not in the same place. And that's obviously because you're very busy and there are things happening on this end as well. But what was the reason for coming to Washington this time?
I'm part of observation mission from Parliamentary Assembly of OSCE, it's Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and the United States is the part of this organization. So when elections happen in the United States, members of parliament from other countries come to observe. So actually, I observed on Tuesday in Washington, D.C. and in Virginia. I would say that American electoral system is quite different, and of course, it differs from state to state. And I would say, part of what I saw is illegal. For example, in Ukraine, like, you cannot have any party representatives near the poll station, especially trying to give up the sample ballots. And also, I was surprised. I mean, in DC, you don't have to show ID to get the ballot, which is quite strange. But they would just ask you for a name and then, the address where you live. But in Virginia, it's different. You need to show the ID, and But it was interesting. I think it was well organized. All the people that worked on the polling stations, they know what to do, and they were very cooperative, and actually the whole process was quite simple. I don't know, I cannot compare to the states where this toss or leaning districts where the campaign was on high emotions. Because on the districts that we were observing, it was quite predictable.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about the orderly process. Where you observed was, but there were some places around the country where things weren't as orderly as they should be. But that can happen anywhere at any time. So
and by the way, not all of the states they welcome international observers. So we could observe only in those states that let us in. And you would have 17 or 18 states around the country that say, no, we're not letting international observers to observe.
Yeah, that's a part of what I'm getting at here. There are those states that think differently about democracy. There's been as well a lot of concern about Russian meddling or outside meddling and interference in elections here in the U.S. From some of the people that you were able to talk to, not necessarily members of Congress or your counterparts, but just anybody in general, did you get any sense here that people are concerned about the electoral process here in the U.S.?
Actually, we had some briefings with representatives of your Central Electoral Commission and those bodies that oversee the elections in the U.S. on the federal level. And actually, we talked about this possible interference from Russia, but it looks like, again, wishful thinking. I think that United States made a lot of conclusions after 2016 elections and and other elections. I see that in some social media, some people actually that were banned or before or that they were accused of providing these Russian narratives, they appeared again. But I don't think it's huge influence. It also looks like that Russians want to look scary, but at the end of the day, they're not capable of doing something solid. But still, cybersecurity is very essential, and as well, it's very important to understand that all of very like one candidate, which very extreme, like extreme right, and he would say something that we're not going to help Ukraine at all. It appears in Russian propaganda like 5 minutes later. So they have been using the freedom of speech. Basically, it's freedom of speech. You're free to elect whoever who is binding to legal that he's or he or she is capable to run. But basically, Russians are trying to use in their own propaganda something that they hear in the campaign in the United States, or they try to put it in such light that it's favorable for them. But I think at the end of the day, democracy won on Tuesday 8th. And this is the main answer to these attacks and attempts.
Yeah. Were you able to have any conversations with your American counterparts, people in Congress, the Senate, et cetera, about Ukraine? And if so, what did they tell you?
We didn't have that many meetings with congressmen because obviously they were all on their districts and constituencies. We had a meeting with Senator Ben Cardin, and he assured that the support from the Congress will be ongoing. And of course, I'm sure that we would have to come back again, after January 3rd to meet new members of Congress that were just elected that probably, didn't think about foreign policy too much because they were concentrating on the topics which are, about their constituencies, about the states where they live. And I'm sure that we would need to speak to them, to tell the situation on the ground that's happening in Ukraine. And we really hope that bipartisan support will continue. And it looks like, at least, from what we hear, it will continue. There might be, some discussions in which form, but still, I think that the strategy to have Ukraine win is actually a right one for us and for America, because the quicker Ukraine wins, the faster world will get back to normal, way of life and economical prosperity and whatever. But without this victory, it will be also always instability. And well, I cannot even imagine that Ukraine falls. But if it happens, Putin will go to Baltic states, to Lithuania, to Poland, and that is Article 5. And Americans then would just have to allocate budgets or give military support. They would have to put boots on the ground because they are bound with this Article 5. So right now, actually, we're fighting. All civilized world are fighting with our hands. So let's just make it faster.
Yeah. What are your Baltic counterparts and people in Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and other parts of the region? What are they saying to you about the current situation? How do they feel about where things stand?
Well, they really understand the situation because they're so close to this enemy. And of course, they understand that Ukrainian army is basically the only army in this region, for example, that can not just stand against Russians, but actually be victorious and be counterattacking, have these very successful special operations. So basically, Baltic states and Polish as well are relying on us that we do, our part of the job. And also, I think the voice from Baltic states is very strong, is that peace will not be peace without justice. So besides securing the victory on the battlefield, we need to establish this international tribunal for political and military leadership of Russia. We need to have this all perpetrators and all of them that committed war crimes to be in the court and to be punished. Because we cannot just say, okay, we're done. We reintegrated all the territories. We restored our territorial integrity, and they can go away and come back to all of the international organizations and be okay. No, we need to restore our country, to rebuild it, using as well the reparations from Russia, or the frozen assets of the people that are under sanctions. Because I don't think it's fair that only taxpayers of civilized countries have to pay for it. I mean, you have billions of these assets frozen. We need to find a mechanism. That's another case. How to do it. In what court, what is the procedure, what is the list of these ruined objects, but we need to make it happen.
One thing I'd like to ask you about that I think is more important than anything else, and I haven't asked you this before, and I should have, but I will now moving forward periodically when we speak. This war is a problem for everyone, but it's a gigantic problem for the children, for young people. And I know you have a daughter, you've spoken about her before. How is she, and how are other children in Ukraine reacting and responding to this war, which is moving close to 9 months now?
Well, half of all of the children, which would make 4 million, which is the size of the country, and Ireland has 4 million people, are displaced either internally or externally. So they are either somewhere outside of Ukraine, or they had to change the location to go from these, cities that are under bombing, like artillery shelling every day. So they had to relocate. So that's a huge number. And I think that we would need a big problem. Actually, we do have it now, but we're still sort of on the adrenaline. But then we'll have to deal with all sort of psychological problems. I mean, people, like students, the small children, when they went to Poland and went to school in Poland, when they hear the truck, the fighters truck going with this siren, that would go under the table because they think that they felt that it's an air raid and they will be bombed. So it's something psychological that is in every person, because we'll all have post-traumatic syndrome. I would say millions of people, if not all, because the war had affected every family. And of course, I mean, schooling in Ukraine 2022 is something very special because you are either studying online. Well, thanks God we had COVID. It's funny to say, but at least our system adjusted to online school, and some of the students, they are abroad but still studying online in Ukrainian school to keep up the program. Those who went to school, my daughter goes to school physically. So when there is air raid, they had to go to the basement, and I don't think that anyone would imagine the life of the 8 years old that they actually can differ the names of the missiles, Kaliber,
Wow.
Kinjal, Iskander, they know all of that names. Those children that live closer to the front can differ them by sound. So it's something, crazy in the 21st century. We're speaking about the artificial intelligence, climate changes, but, people are literally dying from imperial war in the center of Europe, because it is imperial war. I cannot, tell. It's absolutely barbaric what they do. I mean, and of course, those children that are displaced, they need the humanitarian aid as well. I mean, everyone that has kids know how kids grow fast. You have to change clothes and shoes like every 6 months,
Yeah.
and or to get the tablets for them to go online schooling. But I remember a very good piece of work. I think it was Deutsche Welle, and they filmed in the center of Kiev after these brutal attacks when people were actually killed on the street in the car, and one of the missiles hit in the center of Kiev, hit like this playground, and the journalists went 2 days after, and kids were playing in this huge hole. They've been kids, they playing on the side where missiles came. It was, safe because there were no parts already. All of the services worked there, and the journalist said, well, asked a boy, I'm 10 years old probably, like, are you afraid? And he answered, I'm Ukrainian. Ukrainians are never afraid.
Well, that's pretty apropos, because I was just about to ask you how you were doing, but I think you just told me how you're doing. But I'll ask anyway. How are you holding up in this situation?
I think that every person needs to have this light at the end of the tunnel. So for me, it's just what can I do to make it closer, to make the victory closer, to help Ukrainians to survive the winter, the war. And I think that actually everyone is doing something to bring it closer. I mean, some people, as President Zelensky, are doing much more because of of their position, of their charisma. We as members of parliament can do also, be advocates. But we have, volunteers, teachers are teaching in these bomb shelters, doctors are, having this the birth delivery in the basements. And actually in Kiev, we had in October, I think, yes, in October, we had the highest rate of marriages. So people are still, living their life because they do not want Russians to steal this life.
That's really important. MP Kravchuk, thank you as always for taking time to talk with us. We know you have to go to do some other things, to do your business, to do your country's business. And we thank you for that. And we thank you for what you and Ukraine are doing for the world. And I also want to thank you viewers for watching, and just please tell your colleagues, friends, and family about this program and get them to subscribe. We're doing some great work here, and this is a part of the reason why are these interviews that we have with MP Kravchuk and others about the situation in Ukraine and other things. But thank you all for joining us. And remember, Kravchuk, we wish you a safe trip home, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.